After the surprising announcement of Pokémon Legends CA, or ZA, or Z Delta, well, whatever, of Pokémon Z, the entire community has once again turned their eyes to the Kalos region. Surely in these weeks many have fantasized about all the possible lore that a new Legends game could bring us. After all, this is the region of the Mega Evolution, the Ultimate Weapon, the Anistar Sundial, the Chamber of Emptiness, the Ghost Girl looking for someone. Today, we are going to analyze in as much depth as possible one of the potential keys to the story and lore of Pokémon Legends CA. Because yes, it's quite possible that clues about this game were hidden in plain sight years before its release. And on top of that, did you know that CA backwards is AC? I know. I'm sure you haven't read that 3000 times since the announcement. However, we won't be focusing on the Monarch today. AC has already been thoroughly discussed, and there are other characters in Pokémon X and Y who also deserve the spotlight, so let's save the tasty old man for another time. Today, we're going to shift our focus to the true catalyst of the entire Pokémon's Infinite Energy arc. The one who gave shape to the Ultimate Weapon, the one who died and was resurrected, the unobtainable Pokémon, forgotten for over 10 years until now, the Eternal Flower Floette. As it's been over a decade since the release of Pokémon X and Y, and I'm sure there are people who either don't remember them well or haven't even played the games, what the heck is this Eternal Flower Floette? Why is it so special? Isn't it just a different form of a rather mediocre Pokémon? At first glance, it just looks like a Floette with an edgy flower, right? It's like Sonic's Shadow. Well, no, not at all. We are looking at one of the most important Pokémon in the history of the saga, yet without ever having been obtainable. You see, in Pokémon X and Y, we are told that 3000 years ago, Kalos had a king named AC, who ruled alongside a Pokémon he adored, a small Floette. This Floette meant the world to AC, but during a terrible war that Kalos had with another region, his beloved Pokémon was forced to fight in it. After a few years, his worst fears came true, and AC received the small coffin containing his fallen friend, who had died in the heat of the battle. Blinded by grief over the loss of his friend, AC made a decision against nature. He would bring his Floette back to life, no matter the cost.
What's wrong with bringing something you love back into this world? Without my beloved Pokémon, no other Pokémon have any meaning.
To do so, he built a machine capable of reviving Floette, and by using its power, he was reunited with his beloved Pokémon. But getting Floette back wasn't enough. His heart was filled with rage and resentment. He didn't want to and couldn't forgive the world that had caused so much harm to his Pokémon. Driven by revenge, AC twisted his extraordinary machine into the Ultimate Weapon, and thus the king became the harbinger of destruction that ended the war. However, Floette discovered a terrible secret. The machine that had revived her was feeding on life energy. She was alive at the cost of sacrificing numerous innocent Pokémon now turned to stone. Floette realized that AC, her once friend and companion, was no longer the man she knew, with an infinite love for Pokémon, and heartbroken, she decided to leave him. Upon losing his Pokémon for the second time, the king begins to realize he has made a mistake and decides to leave the region, carrying with him the key that activates the Ultimate Weapon, so that no one could ever again use such a monstrous invention. However, despite both having received eternal life from exposure to the Ultimate Weapon's energy, AC continued to age and grow. He spent the next 3000 years wandering the world as a solitary giant, until the events of Pokémon X and Y, and thanks to stopping a descendant of his younger brother who wanted to use the Ultimate Weapon again, Lysander, and destroy it, AC is finally forgiven by his Floette, who once again saw in that man someone who loved Pokémon. After an eternity, both companions were together again. Alright, now that we are all on the same page and you know the importance of AC's Floette in Pokémon lore, there are a few crucial takeaways. First, it's a unique Floette, given that we've never seen another one with those colors and that flower, known as the Eternal Flower. Second, it's a Pokémon that a human has managed to resurrect, something we've never seen in the series aside from the legendary Ho-Ho. Third, it wasn't only revived, but also achieved immortality. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, it's the catalyst of the Infinite Energy arc, since that energy was what powered the weapon and granted both characters eternal life. However, the latter doesn't imply that everything special about this Floette was received when it was irradiated with infinite energy, not at all. Contrary to popular belief, this Floette has always had this appearance, since in all the cutscenes that show us the war, Floette has always shown these distinct colors and that black and red flower, even before dying and being revived thanks to the machine. And even in those cutscenes, it has always been displayed as a very powerful Pokémon, unleashing a devastating beam of light, which is no ordinary attack. It's the Pokémon's signature move, exclusive to this form and, therefore, like the Pokémon itself, never before obtainable in the games. Light of Ruin. A cool and imposing name, indeed. Because yes, I said before that this Floette wasn't merely a different form, because it isn't just physically shown. This attack and its stats also place it in a league far superior to its counterparts. For starters, it has a different cry compared to the other Floettes. It's like more imposing and less high-pitched. Furthermore, while normal Floettes have a total base stat sum of 371, the Eternal Flower Floette boasts a total of 551, only 1 point less than Florges, its theoretical final evolution, but with a higher special attack stat. Can you imagine a new Mega that would be an Eternal Flower Florges? It would be a monster in battle. Returning to AZ's Floette's exclusive attack, Light of Ruin, it's an extremely powerful move. With a base power of 140, it's not only the most powerful Fairy-type move, but also the only one that inflicts recoil damage on the user. Interestingly, the description of this move reads: drawing power from the Eternal Flower, the user fires a powerful beam of light. This also damages the user quite a lot. This adds a crucial detail, and that is, as we could suspect, that the immense power of this Floette, and likely the source of its uniqueness, stems directly from that sinister flower. A crimson blossom with 3 large pointed black petals and 3 smaller red ones. It's no coincidence that AZ designed the ultimate weapon, which also fires a beam of light, to resemble his Floette's flower. In fact, this is reinforced in the only Pokédex entries for this Pokémon, which surprisingly aren't found in X and Y, but in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. In the latter, we can read: terrifying energy is concealed within its ominous flower, but Floette still swings it about innocently. Cool, so an ominous flower with terrifying energy. Intriguing. And in its solar version it says: the flower it's holding can no longer be found blooming anywhere. It's also thought to contain terrifying power. Once again, the supernatural power emanating from the flower is mentioned, but now with the added detail that this dark flower seems to have vanished from existence. All this aligns with the behavior and nature of Floettes, as many Pokédex entries mention that they draw power from the flowers they carry after choosing them as Flaveves. It's plausible that this particular Floette simply happened to choose a specimen of the enigmatic, now extinct, Eternal Flower as its own. So the truly powerful and strange element here is that flower. But is there anything more we can discover about it? Well, the games offer little further information, leaving us to wonder whether the name Eternal Flower predates exposure to infinite energy or not. However, in real life, we can examine the flower or flowers that may have inspired its design and symbolism. The first thought that might come to mind is that the Eternal Flower is based on the Fleur de Lis. This stylized symbol, often representing a lily with 3 petals, has been widely used throughout human history, but is particularly associated with French royalty. It would be fitting for it to draw inspiration from something specific to Kalos, as the normal Floette's 5-petal flower is likely a reference to the Pentagon, the region's iconic symbol. And yes, while the Fleur de Lis is likely one inspiration behind the Eternal Flower, Pokémon designs often draw from multiple sources. And lilies, though they can be red and have similar petals, typically have 6, unlike this Floette's flower, which features 3 large black and red petals along with 3 smaller red sepals. This number of petals would more closely resemble a flower related to lilies called Trillium, which, although might sound like an alien mineral from Marvel, it's actually a better name than the specific variety that's relevant to us, known as Trillium erectum. I think I'll keep calling it Trillium, just in case YouTube gets picky. But hey, I think that if I show you a picture of these flowers, the resemblance to the Eternal Flower becomes quite clear. In any case, either flower family could serve as inspiration for this Floette. However, it's worth noting that black or very dark variants of these flowers are extremely rare, almost legendary. And in the language of flowers, black is often associated with hatred, death, mourning, or eternal love. Quite fitting for the story of AZ and his Floette. Okay, so it's clear that this isn't just a simple color variation of a regular Floette, but then what are its origins? How could a Floette like this even exist? Well, the game suffered no explanation beyond its role as AZ's companion, but few people know that, outside of them, we actually know how the Monarch of Kalos obtained it. Shortly after the release of Pokémon X and Y, Game Informer interviewed Masuda, and surprisingly, he revealed some additional lore details not mentioned in the games themselves. Sona's romantic interest in the protagonist, Lysander being created while designing AC, the Kalos War being a conflict between two regions rather than a civil war, but the most intriguing revelation for us is that Masuda revealed that the Eternal Flower Floette was a gift from AC's mother. If we also consider that, unlike lilies, the trillium flower can be found in Asia, but primarily in North America, this could strengthen the theory that the royal family of AC and his brother has ties to Unovas. But Unova isn't the only region connected to AC and the Eternal Flower, since within the games themselves, AC is mentioned in Hoenn not once, but twice. When Zinnia recounts the story of Rayquaza's Mega Evolution in the Delta episode, she mentions a tall visitor from a distant land who witnessed the event and said, "It is the Delta, born of the great disturbances in this world. By the bonds born of mankind's wish and the power of the stones, it will calm the troubles that plague the world." So, a very tall foreigner who seemed to understand Mega Evolution. Could it have been AC? Well, all signs point to it, as coincidentally, that meteorite was responsible for creating the crater in which the beautiful city of Zootopolis was founded. And in the heart of the city, right in front of the Cave of Origin, stands a tree that is different from the rest. A majestic tree, adorned with beautiful flowers. And it's a very special one, since when we arrive, it seems that Wallace's master has just finished telling him the story of the enormous tree. This tree, it turns out, was a gift from a huge man who visited them from the Kalos region. And that's not all. Beneath the tree, nestled among the flowers, one bloom stands out from the rest, in both size and color. It's none other than the Eternal Flower. This opens two possibilities. The first is that if the Eternal Flower is inherently mortal and not simply as a result of the Ultimate's weapon influence, which I doubt, then AC carries more seeds of this enigmatic flower and knows how to cultivate it, since it seems unlikely that its growth beneath the tree he gifted to Zootopolis is a mere coincidence. The second, and in my view the more likely option, is that if the flower itself isn't immortal, this would imply that now, thousands of years later, it has begun to bloom again in the wild, coincidentally shortly before Floette and AC are reunited. This might seem like a fitting conclusion for the video, right? Not quite. I haven't finished yet. We still need to discuss a little bit about Legends CA. Some of you might be wondering why dedicate a video to AZ's Floette at this point? If it was unobtainable for so long, surely it will remain that way, right? Well, there are some clues suggesting we might see it again soon, and perhaps after more than 10 years it will finally become obtainable. After spending so long in oblivion, in 2023 it was one of the Pokémon unexpectedly added to Pokémon Home. This could be seen as a hint to the announcement of the Kalos-based Legends game the following year, but more importantly it suggests that players might eventually be able to transfer it to Pokémon Home and, therefore, make it obtainable in a game for the first time. So perhaps in Legends CA we'll finally have the opportunity to legally catch this forgotten Pokémon for the first time. Whether it joins us temporarily or we discover a way to cultivate more Eternal Flowers and spread them throughout the wild remains to be seen. As we witnessed in Hoenn, it might be possible to bring this lost flower back from extinction. Although there's one thing I'd love to see in this Legends game. If it takes place in the future rather than the past, we could witness the true ending of the story of AC and his Floette, and that after 3000 years of separation, burdened with the curse of immortal solitude, and following their redemption and reunion at the end of X and Y, in some hidden corner of the Winding Woods we could find a humble grave, adorned with a handful of eternal flowers growing beside it, implying that they finally found peace, but above all, they found it together. Although there's one last thing that bothers me. Don't you think the flowers blooming in the tree AC planted in Hoenn bear a striking resemblance to Glimmora? Combine this with all the theories surrounding the potential connection between the Ultimate Weapon and Area Zero, the similarities between Glimmora, the Ultimate Weapon and the Eternal Flower itself, its laser beams. I'm not Detective Looker, but there's something fishy going on here. But if you'd like to delve deeper into the lore of Paldea and its crystal apocalypse, I'll leave that video in the corner. But first, don't forget to subscribe, just like this Eternal Floette is doing, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, so we can see this special and unjustly forgotten Pokémon again. Thank you very much for your time, and see you in the next video.